she bout to come. When I come, I rub my dick across her gums. She love me cause I'm all about funds and having fun. Broke her ass for a honey bun. Had to hit me back, yeah.
KuroKen. Kuroo was never one to back down from a challenge. When Oikawa had sent the message in the group chat, "Bet you can't ignore Kenma for 24 hours, I dare you," Kuroo hadn't hesitated. He knew exactly what Oikawa was trying to do, but he had the perfect strategy. Kenma's too calm, he'll barely notice. No way he's going to make me break the challenge. So, with that smug confidence, Kuroo had accepted. He had to admit, ignoring Kenma for a full 24 hours would be difficult. But Kuroo was confident he could pull it off. It wasn't long before he started. At first, it felt like a piece of cake. He would sit on the couch, pretending to focus on his phone while Kenma was glued to his game, the two of them barely acknowledging each other. Kuroo noticed, of course, that Kenma seemed to be more focused on his screen than usual, but he just shrugged it off. Kenma's always like that when he's gaming, Kuroo thought. No big deal. But Kenma wasn't completely oblivious. No, he wasn't that dense. Slowly, Kuroo could feel a change in the air, like a quiet tension. Kenma would glance at him from time to time, and then, when he thought Kuroo wasn't looking, he'd let out a little sigh, as though he were trying to get Kuroo's attention. Kuroo, of course, stayed firm. The first few hours were fine. In fact, they were so quiet that Kuroo started to get a little bored. He'd find himself staring at Kenma's back, watching the way his fingers moved over the controller as if he could make the game do whatever he wanted. Kenma was a little too good at games, and honestly, Kuroo admired it. But he wasn't about to let that break his challenge. Kenma, however, was starting to notice the change in the atmosphere. Kuroo hadn't said anything all day, not even the usual teasing remarks, not even a "Hey, Kenma, how's your game going?" It was as if Kuroo had been purposefully avoiding him. Kenma adjusted his glasses and then sighed again. No big deal, he told himself. Kuroo's just being weird. He'll snap out of it. But as time dragged on, the silence between them grew heavier. Kenma shifted in his seat, then slowly glanced at Kuroo out of the corner of his eye. His lips parted like he was about to say something, but then he thought better of it and focused back on his game. Then came the next phase. Kenma, having grown tired of his quiet loneliness, started testing the waters. He'd scoot closer to Kuroo, his body just barely brushing against him, but Kuroo didn't react. Kenma leaned forward slightly, just enough for his head to rest on Kuroo's shoulder, his fingers still moving rapidly across the controller. Kuroo stiffened, trying to suppress the smile that threatened to form. Nice try, Kenma, he thought, but he still didn't say anything. He refused to let this break his streak, but that only seemed to make Kenma more persistent. By hour 16, Kuroo could feel Kenma's presence next to him like a shadow, always there, always watching, but never speaking. It was like an invisible pull, and Kuroo had to fight not to glance at him. He knew Kenma was slowly unraveling, but he still didn't give in. Finally, after an hour of persistent shoulder nudges, sighs, and the occasional desperate glance, Kenma climbed into bed next to Kuroo. He didn't say anything at first, just curled up under the covers, pretending to fall asleep. Kuroo, stubborn as always, stayed in the living room, his eyes on the TV. But something about the quiet in the room changed. He could feel Kenma's presence in the bed, and it was hard not to let his gaze flicker toward him. He told himself that it didn't matter, that he was winning, but deep down, Kuroo knew Kenma wasn't going to let him win so easily. Kuroo stood up, stretching, and walked toward the bed. "I'll just sleep in here for a bit," he thought, hoping to ignore Kenma's presence for a few more hours. As he climbed into bed beside Kenma, he tried to settle into the covers, keeping a safe distance from his boyfriend. And that's when Kenma made his move. Without warning, Kenma jumped up, wrapping his arms around Kuroo's waist and pulling him down into the bed with a surprising amount of force. Kuroo blinked in shock as Kenma literally ambushed him, straddling his waist. "I swear to God, Kuroo, if you don't talk to me right now, I'm going to cry," Kenma said, his voice calm, but his eyes betrayed him. There was a glint of dramatic exaggeration in his gaze that made Kuroo laugh. Kuroo raised an eyebrow. "You're not going to cry, Kenma. You're way too cool for that." Kenma's gaze suddenly softened, his lips trembling just slightly. "I will if you don't speak to me," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. He bit his lip, looking like he might actually be on the verge of tears. Kuroo laughed at how ridiculous the whole situation was. "Come on, you're bluffing." But Kenma didn't let go. He stared at Kuroo with wide, innocent eyes that could have convinced anyone to do anything. And then, with perfect timing, the first tear fell. It was a single, slow tear that slid down Kenma's cheek. The moment Kuroo saw it, His expression faltered. He opened his mouth to say something, anything, but Kenma just shook his head. I'm serious. If you don't talk to me, I'll cry more, Kenma said in the most deadpan, serious voice Kuroo had ever heard. His lip trembled, and he even sniffled a little, doing his absolute best to sell the act. Kuroo stared at him for a long moment, trying to maintain his composure. This isn't real. It's not real. He's faking it, Kuroo thought. But the second tear fell, he realized just how convincing Kenma was. Kenma, Kuroo said, his voice cracking slightly as he tried to hold back his own laughter. You're really crying? Right now? You're a damn good actor. Kenma sniffled again. Do you want me to cry more? He leaned in closer, his hands tightening around Kuroo's chest. Kuroo blinked and then laughed out loud, finally giving in. All right, I give up. I'll talk to you. No more ignoring. I'm sorry, Kenma. Kenma's face immediately softened, and without missing a beat, he wiped his eyes dramatically with the back of his hand and grinned. Good. I was about to start crying for real. Kuroo sighed in relief, still chuckling. You are way too good at that. I swear, I almost thought you were really going to cry. Kenma just smirked, his usual quiet demeanor returning. Well, I can't help it if you're that stubborn. Besides, he added, snuggling against Kuroo's chest, I really wanted to win the challenge. Kuroo sighed, wrapping his arms around Kenma. You win, Kenma. I can't handle your crying act. I'll never ignore you again. Kenma smiled into Kuroo's chest, clearly satisfied with his victory. Good, because I really hate losing. Kuroo shook his head, still laughing. You're impossible. UshiTen. Tendou wasn't usually one to back down from a challenge. When Oikawa had thrown the gauntlet in the group chat, I bet you can't ignore Ushijima for 24 hours. Dare you, Tendou? Tendou had been all in. He knew exactly how this was going to go down. Ushijima wasn't the type to get easily upset, and Tendou was pretty confident he could ignore him without much trouble. Of course, that was before he realized just how clingy Ushijima could be when he felt like something was off. Tendou wasn't expecting this. The challenge started easily enough. Tendou was lounging on the couch, flicking through his phone, while Ushijima was sitting across the room reading a book, his usual stoic self. It was all going according to plan. No talking, no making eye contact, no distracting Ushijima with his usual flirtations and teasing. Just complete, uninterrupted silence. But then something strange started happening. Around the third hour of Tendou silently enjoying his victory, he noticed Ushijima slowly edging closer. At first, it was subtle. Ushijima moved his chair closer, and then he leaned forward slightly, his gaze lingering on Tendou for just a second too long. Tendou didn't say anything, thinking it was just a coincidence. But by hour 4, it was obvious Ushijima wasn't just getting closer. He was actually following him. Tendou stood up to grab a drink from the kitchen, trying to avoid any interaction. But as he turned, he felt a familiar, large presence right behind him. Ushijima. Tendou raised an eyebrow. You okay there? Ushijima stared down at him with those wide, intense eyes of his, completely oblivious to the challenge. I'm just trying to figure out what I did wrong. Tendou's jaw dropped. What? Did wrong? You didn't do anything wrong. You're fine. Ushijima immediately perked up, taking a small step closer. Then why are you ignoring me? He asked, voice soft, almost anxious. Tendou blinked. Shit, he hadn't expected Ushijima to actually notice. He'd been so confident that ignoring him would be easy. He was way off. Tendou scratched the back of his head awkwardly. I'm just busy. Busy with this challenge. I'm not ignoring you on purpose. Ushijima frowned, clearly unconvinced. But you're still not talking to me. What did I do wrong? Tendou's heart melted a little. Why does he have to be so fucking sweet? Nothing at all. You're fine, I swear. Tendou quickly tried to defuse the situation, but Ushijima just stared at him, like a confused puppy who didn't understand what was happening. By hour 6, the situation had escalated. Tendou tried to escape by retreating to his bedroom, but Ushijima wasn't having any of it. The giant walked into the room after him like it was the most normal thing in the world. Are you mad at me, Tendou? Ushijima asked, his voice soft and uncertain. He was standing at the foot of the bed, his huge frame almost making the room feel smaller. Tendou tried his best not to burst out laughing, but it was so hard. Ushijima looked like a confused puppy, standing there with that look of concern on his face, his eyes wide, filled with nothing but genuine curiosity. Tendou sighed dramatically, but he couldn't hide the smile tugging at the corner of his lips. Ushijima, I'm not mad at you. I'm just doing this challenge, all right? You're not doing anything wrong. Ushijima blinked, then slowly walked over and plopped down next to Tendou on the bed. Oh, but, you're still ignoring me. He was practically whining now, which only made the situation more ridiculous. Tendou was dying inside. I know, I'm supposed to, but you're like a puppy following me around. I'm trying not to laugh. Ushijima blinked again. So, you're not mad at me? No, I'm just. Tendou threw his hands up in defeat. Fine. Fine, I'll talk to you, okay? Just stop looking at me like I'm going to disappear or something. You look so sad. Before Tendou could even finish his sentence, Ushijima wrapped his arms around him, pulling him into a tight, almost suffocating hug. I'm sorry, I just wanted to know what I did wrong. Tendou had back a laugh, even though Ushijima's sincerity was completely adorable. You didn't do anything wrong, Ushijima, he said, almost sounding like he was reassuring a small child. You're just too clingy. At that, Ushijima pulled back slightly, looking even more concerned. Clingy. Tendou couldn't help it anymore. He burst into laughter, clutching his stomach. Yeah, clingy. You've been following me around like a lost puppy. I didn't expect you to react this much. Man. Ushijima's expression shifted, and for a second, he looked shocked. But then, as if remembering what was at stake, he leaned forward again, this time presenting a small box of chocolates. Here, I know you like these. Tendou froze. What the hell? Does he actually think I'll fall for this? He raised an eyebrow. Seriously, Ushijima. I'm sorry, Ushijima repeated, his tone low and sincere, before leaning in and planting a soft kiss on Tendou's cheek. Please talk to me, please. Tendou blinked, completely caught off guard by how sweet and clingy Ushijima was being. Oh my god, I can't take this anymore. I'm seriously losing this challenge. Alright, I give in. Fine, Tendou exclaimed, throwing his hands up in defeat. You win, Ushijima. You've totally broken me. Ushijima immediately smiled, his face lighting up like a Christmas tree. He gave Tendou another hug, this time much tighter, practically crushing him in his excitement. Yes, I knew it. I knew you couldn't ignore me. Tendou laughed, but he had to admit, Ushijima's persistence was kind of charming. He sighed in mock exasperation. You're impossible, you know that. Ushijima beamed, completely unbothered. I just wanted to make sure you were okay. You looked so distant. Tendou rolled his eyes, but he couldn't help but feel a little guilty for the way he'd handled the challenge. Well, you definitely made me crack. You're just too cute for me to ignore. Alright? Now, can we please just relax? Ushijima nodded enthusiastically, wrapping an arm around Tendou's shoulders and pulling him in closer. Of course, but you still owe me kisses for the chocolates. Tendou groaned, but he couldn't help smiling. You're lucky I love you, Ushijima. I know, Ushijima replied, grinning like he'd just won the lottery. And I love you too. Tendou sighed again, but this time, it was a happy sigh. Damn it, I failed the challenge, but I can't be mad. He's just too much. ft.KuroKen. Title. Oikawa had confidently accepted the challenge from the group chat. Bet you can't ignore Iwa-chan for 24 hours. You'll break in less than 5. As if he was Oikawa Toru, a man of self-control, discipline, and patience. He could absolutely ignore Iwaizumi for a full day. At least, that's what he told himself. The first 10 minutes went smoothly. Iwaizumi was in the kitchen, making coffee, while Oikawa sat on the couch, scrolling through his phone like nothing was out of the ordinary. Easy, no problem. Then Iwaizumi walked into the living room, coffee in hand, and Oikawa immediately felt the weight of his best friends, boyfriends, whatever, presence. Morning, dumbass, Iwaizumi greeted, taking a seat beside him. Oikawa bit his lip, resisting the urge to respond with his usual morning. Iwa-chan instead. He just nodded slightly, pretending to be totally absorbed in his phone. Iwaizumi blinked. Okay, you good. Oikawa ignored him, locking his jaw. Iwaizumi frowned. Did you not hear me? Silence. Iwaizumi narrowed his eyes. Oi, Oikawa, what the hell? He nudged Oikawa's shoulder, but Oikawa refused to react. He had a mission. He was going to win this. That lasted a whole 2 minutes before Iwaizumi leaned in, voice lower. Are you mad at me? Oikawa almost answered on instinct. No, Iwa-chan, of course not. He caught himself just in time and kept staring at his phone like it held the secrets of the universe. Iwaizumi's frown deepened. He set his coffee down and turned his full attention to Oikawa, shifting closer on the couch. Oikawa. Oikawa clenched his jaw. Ignore him. Ignore him. Ignore him. Iwaizumi narrowed his eyes, then smirked slightly, like he had just decided something. Fine, Iwaizumi muttered. You wanna ignore me? I can make that really hard for you. And just like that, the clinginess began. At first, it was subtle. Iwaizumi rested his arm on the back of the couch, brushing his fingers lightly against Oikawa's shoulder. No response. Then, Iwaizumi leaned his head on Oikawa's shoulder. Still nothing. Then, a full body shift. Iwaizumi draped himself across Oikawa's lap, arms wrapped around his waist, looking up at him with those smug, knowing green eyes. Oikawa nearly choked. Hey, Oikawa, Iwaizumi said casually, practically curled against him like an oversized cat. You still ignoring me? Oikawa pressed his lips together so hard his face hurt. Iwaizumi hummed, running a finger up Oikawa's arm. This is kind of fun. I don't think you've ever gone this long without talking. Oikawa gripped his phone tighter. Iwaizumi smirked. Time for phase 2. He sat up, moving closer until their noses were almost touching. Oh, still not reacting. He lowered his voice, letting it get all gravelly and smug. Wow, impressive, Oikawa. I didn't think you had this much restraint. Oikawa's fingers twitched. Iwaizumi Hajime, you're the devil. Iwaizumi suddenly reached out, taking Oikawa's phone and setting it aside. Before Oikawa could react, Iwaizumi climbed into his lap, straddling him with absolutely zero shame. You can't ignore me forever, Iwaizumi sing-songed, his arms wrapping around Oikawa's neck. Oikawa was about to scream. Iwaizumi leaned in closer, his breath warm against Oikawa's ear. Still nothing. His lips brushed against Oikawa's cheek, and Oikawa had to physically grab the couch to stop himself from reacting. Iwaizumi smirked against his skin. What if Iwa-chan? Oikawa finally snapped, grabbing Iwaizumi's waist and shoving him back onto the couch. Iwaizumi burst into laughter, throwing his head back. Ahaha, I knew you wouldn't last, dumbass. You didn't even make it 3 hours. Oikawa groaned, rubbing his face. I hate you. You're the worst. Iwaizumi just grinned, looking way too satisfied with himself. Oh, please, you love me. Oikawa huffed, arms crossed. Maybe. Iwaizumi leaned in again, pressing a quick kiss to Oikawa's cheek. You definitely do. Oikawa rolled his eyes but couldn't help the smile tugging at his lips. Shut up, Iwa-chan. Iwaizumi only grinned wider, still half in his lap. Not a chance.